Hello, my name is Dr. Barry Gidal. I'm a professor of pharmacy at the University of Wisconsin School of Pharmacy. I'm also the chair of the AES Treatments Committee, and welcome to this installment of Clinical Corner, where our topic is going to be on the novel new anti-seizure medication, Ganaxolone. I'm really privileged to be joined today by two experts in this area, Dr. Elia Pestana Knight, who's a pediatric epileptologist at the Cleveland Clinic, and Dr. John Stern, who directs the clinical epilepsy program at UCLA, and he's also the vice chair of the AES Treatments Committee. Thank you guys for joining us today. So let's get started here. So John, I'm going to first ask you a question. Can you share a little bit about, I said this is a novel new medication. Can you tell us a little bit about this molecule? What's it doing? What's the pharmacology behind it?
It's really quite novel in that it's a neurosteroid, and that's something new to epilepsy management. It's related to pregnenolone and has an effect on the GABA A receptor, and that effect is both, well, it's mostly extrasynaptic. And so it's more of a tonic effect on GABA, which is somewhat not common in epilepsy management. And with that, it's promising toward a new way of controlling seizures, but in the same sense, it's interesting beyond epilepsy in many ways as well. So
with that mechanism in mind, what are the similarities then to, say, benzodiazepines?
Well, it does not overlap with conventional benzodiazepines, which are synaptic GABA A agonists. It's curious because there's preclinical evidence of potential synergy with midazolam, thinking about the potential benefit of a combination GABA effect of both synaptic and extrasynaptic.
Okay. Well, I know there's some other unique, features about this, or at least novel. I mean, I know this is, again, an extensively metabolized drug through a variety of cytochrome P450 enzymes, including CYP3A4, 2C19, 2B6, and 2D6. We'll get back to that, Dr. Pestana, and I'm going to ask you some questions about dosing later and how that relates, to these drug interactions. The other feature that I will want to hear about a little bit later is because of the bioavailability of this drug. I know it's dramatically enhanced, at least twofold, by taking it with food in a high-fat meal. So I'm interested to hear about how that impacts the dosing. But before we get to that, Elia, I know this drug received recently a fairly specific FDA approval for CDKL5 disorder. Can you tell us a little bit about, for the clinicians who may not be familiar with that, a little bit about this disorder and the seizures that are presented?
CDKL5 deficiency disorder is one of the top 10 developmental epileptic encephalopathies. And this is due to a mutation in the CDKL5 gene on the X chromosome. It affects mainly girls, but also males. And the key feature at the time of presentations are seizures that very quickly become refractory to treatment. The presentation could be with any type of seizure, focal, motor, generalized, but as time goes by, they quickly become tonic sequence seizures, which become an important seizure type to recognize for this epilepsy. Very refractory to treatment. Response to treatment is between traditional treatment is between 6 and 21% with traditional anti-seizure medications.
Okay, thank you. So you were the lead author in a recent Lancet Neurology paper looking at ganaxolone in this disorder. Can you tell us what the top-line results were in that study?
So our studies is a double-blind phase randomized placebo-controlled study, and we studied ganaxolone at the dose of 63 milligrams per kilogram per day divided TID given with food for patients who were less than 28 kilograms and for those who were above the Western top dose of 1,800 milligrams per day. The medication was administered orally or via enteral feeding, and there was no grapefruit or Seville orange given during this period of time. What we measure as the outcome was the median percentage change in 28 days of the major motor seizure frequency. And what we learned was the ganaxolone provided a 30.7% median percentage change compared to placebo, which only provide the 6.9%.
Okay. So before I ask you about side effects, I want to get back, because that ties back to the pharmacokinetics. So because of the food effect, you say you're giving this to your patients with food. Does it have to be given with food? Should clinicians and pharmacists be advising, patients to only take it with food?
During the trial, the medication was recommended to be given with food.
Okay. And I know there's minimal, you don't need to worry about renal function with this drug because it's metabolized. And you mentioned the potential inhibitors that we should probably avoid P450 inhibitors, including, you said, Seville oranges and grapefruit juice and, other P450 inhibitors. What about the strong inducers? So thinking of things like carbamazepine, the barbiturates, phenytoin, and so forth. Can this drug be given with those strong inducers?
To my recollection, there were not patients with carbamazepine in the trial, but phenobarbital that was not an exclusion criteria for the study. The patient remained on the anti-seizure medications, and there was no anti-seizure medication that was specifically excluded. Now, you have to keep in mind that the group of anti-seizure medication that we use for epileptic encephalopathy is not the same group of medications that we use for partial epilepsy, and there are reports on the literature of patients with CDKL5 deficiency disorder getting worsening of seizure with carbamazepine or carbazepine. There are schools that prefer to treat them with sodium channel blockers, but I think that there is a lack of data because, as I said, these patients come to the epilepsy centers already failing 3 or 4 medications by the time that they are 4 months.
Okay. Thanks. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned and look at what the guidance from the company is about concomitant medication. We probably should be concerned about using them with strong inducers till we know more. So colleagues, can you comment on what the top line side effects that you saw?
So the main side effect that we saw in our population was somnolence. Some patients develop fever, and we saw some patients that have increased in the number of seizures. But the reality is that the drug was very well tolerated. The somnolence was minimal and resolved in many patients. There were no deaths in our studies, and the number of discontinuation because of side effects was very similar between the ganaxolone group and the placebo group.
Okay, excellent. Good. We have another new well-tolerated medicine. All right, I want to shift gears. So, John, back to you. I know currently this drug is only available as an oral suspension. Tell me what you think the future, is directed toward here. Are we going to be looking at different formulations? Will there be other indications beyond CDKL5 that are being investigated?
Yeah, I certainly hope that there are other indications, because I think this is a promising compound now, a medication, and the novelty of it brings a certain amount of attention. It has undergone 2 trials for focal seizures, and both that phase 2 and phase 3 study failed to show separation from placebo in the primary outcome measure. But post-hoc analyses show some evidence of potential areas of development, and so I wonder if the story for focal seizures will continue with different trial and maybe different inclusion criteria for the participants. The area that I think is particularly exciting is its potential for refractory status epilepticus. A phase 2 study was completed and actually was just published last month in Epilepsy. This was a dose finding study with 17 participants that showed signal of potential benefit. And a phase 3 study is underway right now. And this is intended to enroll about 125 participants across numerous sites in the United States. And so the story for that's probably still a ways away, but if it does meet expectation, it could be an important component to the treatment of status epilepticus, which, as we all know, is in need of improved treatments. Beyond focal seizures and status. There are thoughts of using it in other areas of epilepsy, such as infantile spasms and TSC, and these studies are underway. And maybe some interest actually in catamenial epilepsy as a side point because of its relationship to pregnenolone and potential there.
Excellent. So it looks like there's interesting things that could be developed and interesting investigations yet to be done. So colleagues, thank you very much for joining us. I think this is important. It's an important new drug and new tool in our toolkit, and it looks like there's a lot of promise. So with that, thank you, folks, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information, please visit the original work by Dr. Pestana Knight and colleagues, published in 2022 in Lancet Neurology, and the Ganaxolone Prescribing Information, posted on the FDA website.